Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where the Ravens came off their bye week, and man, this team, they won the total yards battle in this game. The turnover differential, dominated in time of possession, only allowed 3 points, got 4 sacks. Man, you look at that, they came out of the bye, and they were great, man, right? No one is upset about anything from this game, right? Just a fun time at the stadium for you guys.
Cold time at the stadium.
It's like running around an ice castle.
I'm still defrosting. I got my hoodie on.
But yeah, it was all right. You know, I tell you what, the last I don't know, 6, 7, 8 minutes or something, that was pretty fun. A lot of defensive stops, a lot of turnovers in the last couple minutes. It was one of those games, man. I was never really that afraid that it was going to be out of reach. I think the Ravens were in control of it much of the game. But man, was it a throwback game. Throwback to the early 2000s. 13 points by the offense, by Lamar Jackson-led offense. Nonetheless, like, yikes. They got to get some stuff worked on. But as far as the defense, man, special teams, they played great.
Never in doubt. I agree with that, Chris. Like, the defense was so suffocating, as we projected we would be able to do. I thought I was going to get sneaky when I went and did my main slate DFS card. I was like, Ravens D, easy. They were the number 1 D that week. And I was like, oh man, I was thinking they'd be somewhere like, top 5, but not like the most expensive spend. And I was like, man, this doesn't even feel sneaky. But I did it anyways. And it was still like a fire emoji. Did I cash? No. But that's because like I actually played a decent card, but not decent enough. You know how it goes. But anyways, I think we should talk about the defense first, because we've actually talked about the offense a lot to start off the show, even though the defense has had great performances. And I felt like this week was a combination of things that we've been seeing for weeks and weeks and weeks, as this defense has kind of reemerged, but just, take it to another level. And I think we should start off with the inside linebacker play. I thought it was stunning. Like, they were flying around. You can see the way they play off one another. Queen and Roquan both had 100% of snaps. Queen got a half sack with Houston on one of the plays, and he's now amongst the leaders of sacks for off-ball linebackers. And I think you're just seeing such an elevated level of play in the middle of the field with the confidence those two have playing together that ripples throughout the rest of the defense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and it wasn't just that they were on the field for 100% of the snaps. They were all over the place. They, at least one of those guys, it felt like, were near the ball on almost every single play. 19 combined total tackles for the two in the game. Both of them led the team. Like you said, the half sack for Queen, sack for Smith. It's what we wanted to see. It's what we wanted to see Patrick Queen paired with, and we're getting huge early returns from this guy. It's almost Marcus Peters-esque level, the return of investment we're getting on these first 2 games for Smith. Of course, he's not having the turnovers that Peters did, but that wasn't what we were expecting from him. That's not what we were expecting him to bring to this defense. But, of course, we can also temper this and say, yes, they were playing Carolina. They were playing arguably one of the worst offensive attacks in the NFL, possibly the worst. But still, you got to commend them for dominating in the matchup as they should have, and they did. And this move is really feeling like a great move to solidify the rest of this defense as we projected it would be, and hopefully they can continue to build on it, because you got Smith and Queen running around there, and in addition to that, we're seeing week in and week out this pass rush continue to be a strength of the defense and really become alive as we continue to get more guys healthy and just more guys comfortable playing with each other in this new scheme.
Yeah, it's really good. I really love what McDonald's doing with the inside linebackers. A lot more in like the pass rush. I think that we maybe didn't see as much from Wink. I think I brought this up a couple of weeks ago. It may have been with Bynes at the time. I don't think we had Roquan. But I love these bring one of the inside linebackers as like the 5th blitzer, and then sort of do another delayed blitz behind, dropping one of the outside linebackers back, sort of like a kind of a feigning the rush to one side and then overloading the center, or overloading the right guard or whatever it is. I think that was the play that Queen and Houston actually shared that sack. It was a very similar one. Rokon was kind of on that delayed blitz behind Queen. A lot of plays like that are just, really creative, just really, really fresh, really new. And it seems to be working pretty well so far for the couple times we've done it. Obviously, I think the defensive line is also playing at a much higher level. Even, some of the outside linebacker play we'll get to in a second. But I think a lot of guys are playing at a high level now. And, it feels like we really have a lot of pieces almost at every level now. And to hold any team to 3 points is awesome. You'd love to see a 0, but that is hard to do. Just because every kicker isn't Justin Tucker doesn't mean that they can't make field goals. So it's good to see. Before we get to the linebackers, though, I feel like we should talk about the next guy here, Alec, because it was one of these guys I think that you were really excited about mid-game. Kyle Hamilton. Talk about him.
Sure. Yeah, Kyle Hamilton was having... I thought he was going to be a potential MVP of the game. He just was playing really hot, and it looked like to me that he was going to get something. Like I felt he was going to make a major play, and shout out to Yoshi, man, on Twitter, because I had questions and he had tweets already. And I went to the tweet and I looked at it and I was able to figure it out. So you can look at the game book like anyone else and say, all right, Hamilton had 37% of the snaps, but what was his split? Because he got hurt. What was the split? He would have had 70% at that point of the snaps he was available to play in. And the guy even went down swinging. He made impact on that last play where he got hurt. And one of the things I saw out of him was really solid recognition and solid tackling, and also just like nastiness and persistence, high motor. So, even if he was getting blocked in a screenplay, he was driving back towards the ball carrier through the blocker to disrupt the play. And the guy's just so big and lanky. Like, that's how we knew it was him that got hurt, because it's like no one else on the field has that like weird body shape. He's like an alien. And I am just so happy to see the report saying that he's trending in the right direction, the knee is stable, etc. Because I would have wept, like if his season was over. I'm so in the bag for this guy at this point, and he's playing so well that he's fun, and that's why I expected out of him. I expected when we picked him up, he'd be fun to watch, and that's what's so exciting is that I think he's going to bring that Raven. We're seeing it with even the pieces that are already there, but that Ravens defense, just fun, electric playmaking, comes out of nowhere to do something because of recognition skills, etc. That we just haven't had in a while. We haven't had that fun for a long time. Even though you got guys like Marlon Humphrey who are good, or players like that, but they're not. They're just like, I don't know. They play within the scheme. Where I guess like safeties can kind of freestyle a little bit, or they're they come out. I feel like they come out of nowhere more often, in a way, and maybe because they're off the screen in the broadcast view, and that's what I'm looking forward to. And he's playing well, and that's all, man. I'm glad he'll be back. He might miss a week or two, but I think he'll be available, and that's what's important down the long stretch.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't fully agree that the players like Humphrey and Peters and
yeah, they could jump other people's routes. That's fair, I guess. I always imagine them playing zones more, whereas like safeties, like almost by definition, are
sure, yeah.
Or rather, the other guys play zone more. Yeah.
I do think it's certainly fair to say that if not for the fact that the Ravens picked up Marcus Williams in the offseason, we could say that Kyle Hamilton is the most exciting Ravens safety to come along since Ed Reed. That's what we're expecting from Hamilton and Williams, and hopefully he can come back soon, because as good as the defense is right now, it can only, we wanted that its absolute highest strength. We want Hamilton out there. We want Williams out there. These past, it feels like every game you're seeing more and more confidence from Hamilton. It was surprising to me that he was only on the field for 70% of his projected snaps. I think every time he was on the field, he made a play, because you were always seeing him. It felt like you were seeing him as much as you're seeing Smith and Queen. As we discussed already, Smith and Queen were actually there on every play. And another thing, he's definitely looking like he's more confident. He's more sure of himself. There was at one point in the broadcast I pointed out, and I forgot to write down when it is in the game, but listeners probably know what I'm referring to, because like I said, the announcer specifically called it out, where where Hamilton was calling out that the Panthers were setting up a screen. He was at his hand pointed, was calling it out that was the look that the Panthers are going to give, and that's what they did, and that was a stop for no gain. It's a little thing like that I don't think we were seeing from Hamilton early in the year, which makes sense. He was learning the NFL game. He was learning the scheme, and the Ravens were trying to figure out the best spot to put him in. And, he still has some work to do, but like we said, he's improving every week. So I'm really excited to see this guy back on the field. Like we said, hopefully this is something that is a small deal, and hopefully the Ravens can be smart with this injury, because we'll need him long-term for this season on the field with Marcus Williams and Chuck Clark. I think I still want the three of them there. I don't want him getting Clark off the field, but putting all three of them on the field for over 2/3 of a defensive game plan, man, that could play some high dividends in the playoffs against the Kansas City Chiefs passing attack, Buffalo Bills passing attack, and the sky's the limit for that type of a safety tandem. If Hamilton reaches even, first round projection light, Kyle Hamilton, by the end of the season, you're looking at the best safety trio in Ravens history going into the playoffs. That's got to make you feel really good going up against these top aerial flights that you'll have to defend against in those games.
Oh yeah, for sure. Right now, yeah, it seems like Hamilton is just like sort of. It's kind of like it was kind of like Geno Stone playing like the threes in the preseason. It just seemed like way overmatched. Alec, it's funny you mentioned that one play of him blowing up that screen. I remember watching that play too. That was DJ Moore. He literally just drove DJ Moore like 5 yards back, and then I think it was like Shi Smith or Chenault or something behind on that screen, and yeah, it was like a no gain or tackle for loss because of that recognition and just the strength to push him back. Just like plays like that where it's just like it's not fair to have a 6'5", safety just coming down on you. It's just a complete physical mismatch. But yeah, we'll have to see how he's doing. I mean, the thing for me is just because he is so tall. I'm not saying this is the injury or anything, but one of the things I think he will have to deal with basically is, being that tall and being able to have to block some of those smaller guys. It can have some like potential for foot injuries. I know Jimmy Smith had some of those issues. I think it may have been the Liz Frank. I think that he had. I think he was just like run blocking, something like that, and he like couldn't put the weight on his foot and just ended up messing him up like that. So, when I saw Hamilton got hurt, I was a little worried that it might be that. It doesn't sound like it is, thank God. But yeah, it's one thing that kind of in the back of my mind, I was just like, oh man, really hope it's not that. But yeah, regardless, Hamilton's playing great. Hope he's back soon. Yes, as far as the other safeties, man, just everything looked really great. It's one of those things, like, I think I saw a couple tackles from Geno, not too much. Chuck, almost the same thing. It seems like he's kind of going through the Marcus Peters thing right now, where it's just, you don't see him that much in terms of, like, splash plays, but the ones you do are kind of the negative penalty plays, which is really unfortunate. But, I've seen Chuck in a lot of the condensed game. He's in a lot of tackles in the box. Let's just say he's in the middle of the scrum. He's active. He's clearly there, doing his job, even if it's not showing up on the stat sheet. So, I think, yeah, once we get Marcus Williams back, man, it's gonna be we're gonna really hit 110% on this defense. I'm really excited.
And one other thing we have to make sure that we call out with the safety group. We talked about how Hamilton went down, obviously, in the game, and Brandon Stevens had to come in and replace him. And again, we talked about, yes, it's the Carolina Panthers. This offense is struggling mightily. They have no one who really can play with this Ravens defense, but still, we've saw several times in the early season that we would have an injury to the secondary, and someone would have to step in. In some cases, it was Stevens. Other times, it was the two rookie corners, and the offense would attack that and to negative results for the defense. And while Stevens did give up a couple plays on the final drive, I mean the game was over by then. The Ravens had won it, so I'm not going to ding him for that. But he came in and helped hold the fort down. And again, that's what we're expecting him to do. But still, since that's been such a trouble spot for this defense, I think we do have to make sure that we call that out and acknowledge it as another thing that went well in this game, an aspect of this team that we were looking for this coaching staff to improve on and figure out a solution to better address those inevitable changes that are going to happen in a season when you have in-game injuries. And at least in this instance, the Ravens had that injury and didn't break a sweat. They continued to put up the same dominant performance that they did when Hamilton was in there.
I guess before Chris kind of goes into the next topic, I do want to say a couple things about this to kind of wrap up the segment. One thing about Chuck Clark, I want to keep an eye on him because it sounds like he had an injury in the chest area, and we saw him come off the field gripping his chest area, his ribs, and favoring it. He continued to play, obviously, and not miss any snaps, but he continued to have that problem in the after the game because he could have had a speech or something apparently, and he didn't want to talk because it kind of hurt. Which is interesting as well because of the green dot. I imagine he has to shout things out and stuff. So keep an eye on that. And then the other thing too is Hamilton is able to get this level of snaps because he's basically playing a quarterback role for the team. And when he got injured, the reason we saw Stevens come in is because he had to play outside corner and they moved Marlon into the inside. So it's interesting, when we do that, it changes Marlon's assignment, which is as expected, but I think worth pointing out. So pretty cool that Marlon was able to get that interception later in the game. What appeared to be on the outside. I guess maybe he started off the slot. I forget how that play started, but yeah, definitely it's nice that he has that versatility to kind of help us out because if we actually kept Marlon on the outside, I think the defense would be worse off in total because the inside would be much more vulnerable. So Chris, where do you want to go next?
Man, I feel like we could talk about a bunch of other players. We kind of just mentioned them now, but just again, Marlon, Marcus, great games from them. Saw some turnovers. The one just shit on Boger because I feel like we're gonna have a segment on that. But just man, that fumble, that was so very clearly a fumble, and it's just so upsetting that they wouldn't let the play continue because that was a touchdown right there that would have covered. If Marlon was just able to pick up that ball and just run it back in the end zone, it was a clear lane. But yeah, no, I mean, it's good to see.
Alec he warned us that this was going to be a Jerome Boger officiated game. We didn't take that into consideration with the spread.
Yeah, you're right. We talked about it. We said it'd be a piece of the puzzle, but I didn't think it was going to cost us so many darn points. It really did cost us actually a decent amount of points too, because you remember that hold, that somewhat sus hold on Prochet, that was called. We would have been at the
and the Moses. The Moses.
Oh yeah,
the
Moses face mask. Yeah. So we're already getting into the Boger corner. I guess it's part of the defense because he was playing defense against our offense.
Oh man. Yeah. I don't know. Another guy, because I feel like we got to go to the offense soon, but another guy I want to talk about on defense, Bowser, man. It's great to have him back. I just say, I think all of our outside linebackers, I think generally play run defense pretty well. Even Owe, who's not really having a great season, particularly in the pass rush department, I think he does okay in run defense. It's something that I really like to kind of watch him do. But Bowser, man, totally different level. It's just awesome. He can set the edge. He can make the shoestring tackles, tackle for loss. He was doing a lot of that yesterday. And even in the pass rush, man, he's not going to be the fastest guy, but he's got a good bull rush. He can collapse the pocket. He was forcing Baker to step up and in some cases, run into some other guys. Love to see him play. It's just great to have him back.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You look at his stats. He's not making the stats yet so far. Apparently didn't record any stats against New Orleans and just 2 total tackles. It did get us stuff for loss in the game, but I agree. You watched him play though; he's looking like his usual self. He's looking like he's getting his legs back under him. I'm expecting in a couple weeks he's going to start making some big impact plays, and it's just really great that the Ravens were able to re-sign this guy. We've obviously talked about what happened with Za'Darius, what happened with Judon, even McPhee before him. Luckily, the Ravens were able to retain Bowser, and he's just going to continue to be a cornerstone of this defense. Just a great player who can do it all, not just pass rush, like you said. So I'm really excited to see how he continues to come along. And again, like I keep saying, this pass rush, we're seeing them have success with Tyus not at 100% strength yet, no Ajabo yet. It's looking a lot better. It's exciting.
Yeah, I'm really glad to see Bowser playing well. It is good to see that basically everyone who's come back from this major injury is playing at a darn good level. And it looks like they did the time that they needed to do, and they're looking good. I guess the only exception to that would be Dobbins in a way, but you always can't blame him because like one way to break up scar tissue is to play more. So the other way is to get surgery, and we're getting close to his 4 weeks being up, so maybe we'll see him soon. And like just Bowser playing well. I did do a bit of an Oweh watch. He played 40% of the snaps, usually against Aquanu. He drew a false start against Aquanu. That doesn't show up in the stat sheet. But, Aquanu was definitely respecting his speed and trying to get out of his set extra fast. But when you got guys like Pierre-Paul and Houston, and obviously I guess Bowser too, playing at such a high level and getting more snaps than him, you can't be that mad. Like, those guys are all playing really well. And I think it's one of those things where we just have a lot of solid options there. And the idea will be, like, we need to see Oweh take advantage of these limited snaps he's getting and really just dial it in and get after the quarterback and just make huge impact while he is out there. That's what the other guys are doing. So I don't know if he'll be able to get much more of a snap percentage. Like 40% doesn't seem that wrong. I think, if he gets to 45, that's great. It's more about that production and that splashiness when he is out there.
Yeah, and I think another thing we just have to remember is, for whatever reason, Ravens outside linebackers, these pass rushers, it takes them a while to develop. Oweh's in his second season. We just talked about Bowser. Bowser's second year in the league was atrocious. The guy hardly had any impact, just a half a sack, no starts, 1 tackle for loss, 1 QB hit. And his rookie season was, he made some impact plays, interception, a couple sacks, a few more quarterback hits than his rookie year. I would say, in a similar vein to Oweh. Oweh made some splash plays. I think Oweh's plays were made in a little more opportune situations, little more impact in higher leverage games than Bowser's was. But it wasn't really till second half of 2019 that Bowser started to take off and start showing the player that he is today. And I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen to Oweh, but I know for myself personally, while understandably, some fans are really starting to lose some patience with Oweh. I think that the track record the Ravens have had recently with these edge rushers and, getting them to, it takes a little bit, but they're getting production out of them eventually. I still have hope that he'll get there. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but there's still a shot. I agree, though. For this year, we got to see more, but luckily, there's going to be some opportunities for him simply just because when he's on the field, even if it's low or snaps, he's going to be there with a bunch of guys who can also rush the pass rush. Gosh, going into the season, we were talking about this team as Oweh might be the only healthy pass rusher we would have, and that certainly isn't the case now. So kind of look at that coin from two sides. But yeah, I agree. We're still waiting to see more from Oweh, but the pass rush in general is still forming well in spite of his struggles this year. And if we're talking about the pass rush, we've talked a little bit about Justin Houston. I think we also got to shout out Jason Pierre-Paul for really being the closer of the game, really. Just on that final drive, got a sack and then an excellent interception when the ball was deflected by... I forget who it was deflected by because the camera watching the broadcast, I don't know if you guys had a better view of it at the stadium. The broadcast camera did not pick it up well, but that ball was deflected, and JPP got an excellent catch there to seal the game. So you got to give some props there for the big vet there, putting on the juice at the end there to close out the win for the Ravens.
Yeah, I think it was Project Washington, if I recall, that got the tip. But yeah, like I said, I think everybody's been playing really well. Yeah, I feel like this week I noticed JPP a little bit more than previous weeks. just a guy I haven't really been watching too much of. But yeah, certainly, yeah. Pass rush is performing very well under Mike McDonald. I think we're at something like 31 sacks, I think, on the season or something. We had 34 or 35 last year. So yeah, I mean, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, I just rewatched it. It was Broderick Washington, his late season breakout that I called on Jason's stream, which I was told he already broke out. He's already doing his thing, which I know. But like I said, he would have more splash plays. And that's one of those, I guess. So yeah, really nicely executed there. Good to put it away too. You know, they were driving. Can't let them get some garbage time points. Like, defense showed up one more time, and I really love it. I think we need to go to the next GIF, or not GIF, I guess, but meme in our show doc. The first meme was Ravens win, didn't cover, with the crying girl, you know, totally depressed. The next meme,
first world problems.
I don't know about this one. I don't know what this meme is. Someone's gonna have to explain. Peter, I think you're the meme boy. So
I am not an expert in memes at all, but I'm guessing this is from some film, and it's got this.
This is from was it Narcos?
Okay, maybe it's something I should watch someday. I don't know, but it's got this like middle-aged guy, and he's just kind of glum. He's sitting here on a swing. He's sitting here on a table. I'm describing something that probably like 98% of the people.
Guy? It's Pablo Escobar from Narcos. Come on,
man. Yeah, this is bad. Usually Alex, the guy who doesn't get movie references. This is bad here. If I'm on Alex's side here.
Jeez. Anyway,
Chris,
yeah,
explain
Ravens
the
fans.
meme and let me explain if I used it correctly.
It's the Pablo Escobar meme. Ravens fans waiting for a touchdown, and yes, it is a very good application of said meme. I feel really weird explaining this because we all should be millennials on the show who know memes, but I guess not all of us are. So whatever. But yeah, no, it took what? It took until halfway through the fourth quarter before we got a touchdown. It was crazy. I mean, Peter over here calling for 5 Ravens to get a touchdown. I'm over here calling for a Jackson 5. We could barely get one. What the hell?
Oh, man, it was interesting. I tell you, so, I mean, when I made my score prediction, the game that came to mind of what I thought we were going to see was 2012. It wasn't the game after the bye week, but the game right after. The Ravens home against the Raiders. I'm pretty sure the Ravens won that one 55-20. That was the one where one of the Raiders defenders was like getting up in Anquan Bolden's face, and he just pointed at the scoreboard and just walked away. It was great. But if you guys remember that game, I mean, it was just like everyone got to do their thing that game. Flacco spread the ball around. Like, there were so many different players got touchdowns. Defense, everyone was making plays. Ravens are doing so well that they were like, what the heck? On this extra point attempt, let's just snap the ball directly to Sam Cook, and he'll run into the end zone for 2 points.
I was going to say, Sam Cook got one, yeah.
That's what I was expecting we were going to get. The Bengals basically did that to the Panthers 2 weeks ago, and I'm just like, we got a better roster than the Bengals. We can do that. And what we got instead was a repeat of another 2012 game, but instead it was that bizarro game in Kansas City, which the Ravens won 9-6 on field goals. It was like, I don't know. I don't know if I can think, aside from that game, a more frustrating game to watch where the Ravens never trailed. That's the other so bonkers thing about this game is just like, there was a lot of impatience from the fan base watching it, understandably, and it's like the Ravens never trailed. And yet we were expecting this offense to be able to do so much against this defense. I know that there are good players on the Panthers defense, and I'm not trying to discredit them, but at the same time, for most of the games this year, it has not been hard for offenses to score against the Carolina Panthers. Yet it was this Sunday for the Ravens, and maybe it was the win, maybe it was a boger, I don't know what, but they did win the game, but at the same time, you're just like, oh man, that's not the most encouraging performance out of the bye.
I was wondering, it might be a weather thing. The Eagles, the other bird team in the area, barely won. They beat the Colts by a single point. Similarly pathetic, in my opinion. A game that you think they would have ran up and won. And I was like, maybe it's the weather. But it looks like that game was at the Colts, which no weather there. So never mind. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely frustrating. And also, I got to talk about this. When I talk to Joey Polone, he hates the boards because it doesn't give you the natural light lines anymore. And then I learned that the boards have created this wind tunnel, chilling effect in the stadium, which I can't have. Get rid of the boards.
Yeah, they were talking about that on
get
the
rid of the
broadcast.
boards. Yeah. I'm team get rid of the boards. I don't care, Bisciotti. You know,
I've always hated the boards.
Sell the boards and pay Lamar. I solved it. There's your money. You can find all the money in escrow by selling the boards. You can give them to another beautiful stadium.
Send it to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, give it to Pittsburgh. They need
F
it.
up that wind tunnel even more.
Like, I say no more boards. You know, if I want to look at fantasy points, I have a phone for that. You know, maybe improve the wireless infrastructure at the stadium. These are all things you can do, but don't give me no board. Messing up the beautiful pictures that Joey and the rest of the crew could take, and making us all colder. Can't have that. You know, we won't have Tucker forever, and then the next kickers have to deal with this swirling wind and not know what to do with himself.
Well, that's a problem for a pod many years down the line, hopefully. But yeah, no. Yeah, offense overall, man, just it was, it's a little frustrating. I can't say, like, Andrews looked relatively healthy. He got a little bit involved. I think the Panthers had a good game plan to kind of keep him away for the most part. Gosh, a couple of plays in particular. I mean, they had like 4 or 5 guys on Andrews trying to get him down. I think the Panthers overall played very disciplined on defense. Definitely a lot better, I think, than even I expected going into the game. Still can't name most of the players on this defense, to be honest. But I tell you what, I mean, I think they all played extremely well. I don't think that there was a single guy that that was out there that didn't play, very well in that defense yesterday. I think the biggest thing for me, man, it's a Bateman injury. It's just like with Bateman, Gus, and Dobbins, I think it really does limit this offense a little bit. And that isn't a knock on the rest of the guys for not stepping up. I mean, Demarcus Robinson, we're going to talk about him in a second, but he had a heck of a game, being the number 1 receiver for Lamar. And it's kind of been waiting. He's been getting the targets, but it's just, Lamar not being accurate or him not getting open or, it's just the yardage wasn't there or anything. But this game, it was kind of all put together. But that being said, like, between Andrews, just it wasn't really enough playing against, a really stout defense that the Panthers were deploying. So, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think Bateman's not coming back this year, but we got to find ways to get some of these other options back, and we got to find some ways of using them more effectively to try to open up a little bit more. Because, yeah, it was tough sledding for both offenses yesterday, for sure.
Lamar managed to throw and complete 72% of his passes. He had a couple drops in there, the INT, and it kind of makes you blow your mind that, like, this wasn't efficient enough to make it work. But it wasn't, because a decent amount of those, I would love to see like a split, but I think a decent amount of them were dump-offs that didn't go anywhere, no yak. And then, similarly, the run game. The run game was terrible until very late in the game. They were not able to run with any level of efficiency, and it'd be those classic problems, man, where you would be like, all right, it's 2nd and 6, and you'd run, and it gets stuffed, and it's now 3rd and 6, and the playbook looks a lot different when it's 3rd and 6 than when it's 3rd and 3, and like things like that. So I think the lack of Gus being able to fall forward, like no matter what, hurt us in this game, and also just the fact that you gotta give credit where credit's due. We talked about this a lot during the preview of how, like, the Panthers are underrated. Like, I'm telling you, man, their defense is better than people give them credit for. And I think it was on full display that they have playmakers. They're able to play really well, particularly that front 7 played really well all game long. Great game plan, just smashing the edges, playing disciplined ball, not, letting, they were following the pullers to a T. I think that was the number one thing. They were following the pullers really well, and it was just good. They played really well, and it made us not effective in the run game, and so many things fall apart when this team can't run the ball well.
Yeah, and I think it all does, for me, it does all boil down to that right there, just that the Ravens were unable to establish the run. And I agree with what you're saying with the Panthers. I still also counter with the fact that aside from Tampa Bay and Atlanta, have been unable to hold an offense to under 19 points in a game this season. I think the Ravens still should have scored more, but it was tough for them to do that when, unlike last season, when the Ravens were able to establish the game through the air due to injuries this season causing, obviously Bateman's out for the year. He was in and out of the lineup before that. Andrews has been in and out of the lineup. Lamar really hasn't had the luxury of having a go-to target week in and week out to develop that chemistry. The Ravens have had to fall back to relying a lot on the running game, and it's incredible how well they've been able to do given the amount of injuries and limited games for Dobbins, for Gus, the bus. Drake's been there all year, but his better games have been in plus matchups, let's be honest, and it still doesn't take anything away from him because that wasn't even what we were getting last year from the journeyman running backs, so he is an upgrade there. But yeah, it just seemed to me that they started out trying to pass the ball, which I didn't mind. I know some fans countered that they would have liked to see the Ravens try and run there. I thought it was a nice opportunity to catch the Panthers off guard, and it would have worked because they were getting the looks they wanted. It just, once they got over midfield, there was the drop by Prochet and the slight overthrow to Andrews where Andrews just couldn't quite corral it, and that killed the drive. But yeah, I think that the inability, not just for the Ravens to really not have terribly effective ground game, but also Lamar. The Panthers did a really good job of containing Lamar. He still got his runs, but there were multiple times where Lamar did moves and was around in the backfield in areas where he was usually able to lull defenders to sleep, particularly against a unit that hasn't played him before, and get those yards. And the Panthers were able to stop him for little gain or behind the line of scrimmage in a couple instances. So yeah, I think inability to establish a run, and also Chris brings up a good point too, the loss of Bateman, the deep passing game. I don't know if the Ravens attempted a pass over 25 yards in the game. Demarcus Robinson had a great game, career high in receptions for him, his second game ever with 100 yards receiving. His career game is apparently a 6-catch, 172-yard, 2-touchdown performance against Oakland, week 2 of 2019. So not his best game as a pro, but certainly the one where he got the most receptions. Most of them were, short slants, out routes, nothing deep. We were still not seeing any of that, of the Demarcus Robinson we saw in that final preseason game, which, we said was something we had to accept was a likelihood. But yeah, without Bateman out there, they don't have a consistent guy that they can do that with, and that's going to condense the defense and make it harder to run. They're going to stack the box, and that's also a variable in what we saw there. Just, the Ravens didn't challenge deep, so the Panthers didn't have to play it.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, Peter. I think another kind of credit to the Panthers as well. Their tackling, I think, was extremely good. Yeah, they really took away that one kind of X factor to Lamar's game of just being able to escape the pocket, buy time, and either run and pick up a first down or find somebody and be able to throw the ball off. There were a couple of them where just like, it just seemed like for a split second, Lamar might have had a window where he could have just taken off. There was one, I think, where we were backed up inside our own 10-yard line, and I think there was a seam, I think, on the right side, and I thought, like, oh, Lamar, you can go off. And then he, bursts a little bit, but then he looks to kind of set his feet again to try and find somebody. And then at that point, it's too late. He has two defenders closing in on him, tries to juke one of them out, but they ended up tackling him. I think it might have been a sack or at least a no-gain run on that play. But, yeah, there were a lot of them like that, man. It just... I don't fault the Ravens, I think, from a game plan perspective, given the wind. As far as having a deep passing game, it's the weather is a factor. You kind of hate to say that, but I really think it was, and I don't blame them for that. I think it could have been effective, given a few little things in terms of execution. I think the game plan could have been a little bit more effective. But that being said, I think the one thing I'd really like to see a little bit more of is more of the the drills of Lamar's escaping the pocket. Okay, who can get open down the field? Give Lamar the space to be able to make a throw downfield, be able to make a play on the ball. I just feel like aside from maybe like Andrews at this point, I feel like there aren't that many players I think who can consistently get open when Lamar is trying to escape the pocket, escape a sack. That's the thing for me. Is like I feel like he's just holding the ball a little bit too long. I'd love to check more of the film to kind of see if that is something consistently that shows up. Whether it's on Lamar or whether it's on the receivers. But I truly think like at this point, like it's not necessarily about the speed to get open, but it's more about like, okay, offensive line needs to block. Lamar can escape the pocket. He can buy time. He can make the throws. We know he can, but we just need guys to be able to, find the right spots in the zone to be able to make these plays. Because at that point, like if you can make those consistently, I mean, that's how you turn third downs into first downs, right? Lamar had a handful of them on Sunday. I'm not going to say that it was non-existent, but we need more of those, especially when the offense isn't really, playing, efficient football.
Yeah, it didn't help that the offensive line play was non-remarkable, for the lack of a better word. They just didn't seem to really be bullying people off the line in any way, shape, or form, and we saw some bad penalties. The level of which that it was deserved, varied, but there were penalties there. And then, Linderbaum, home game, had another bad back-to-back sequence where I forget the order exactly, but it was something like delay of game. Yeah, that's what it was. It was a delay of game, and then there was the bad snap in the back-to-back sequence. And, we've been seeing this delay of game far too often from this team, and this one was at home, and I thought that they shouldn't have that problem at home.
It's really weird, man. I feel like it's a couple games in a row, and in particular, it's that sequence. It's like a delay of game and then a bad snap afterwards. And it almost always happens near the end of the game. It's really, it's like it's a little concerning at this point. Obviously, like he's played well for most of the time, but it's just like it seems like these like weird little mental lapses, which considering that we've had some questionable center play late in the postseason, that makes me a little scared.
Yeah, and I think that is a good transition to something I wanted to talk about here, because we're looking at this game, and obviously the big headline is only 13 points against this Carolina Panthers defense coming off the bye. But as a whole, we were seeing the Ravens offense make some strides before the bye, and you don't want to overblow what happens in just one game. But there are some things I think you have to learn from every game, because you only get 17 now. A very small sample size, especially when you consider other sports, how many games teams have to look at these guys and see how things are working. And I wanted to look at this game and look at what are the offensive issues that happen in this game that are, what is it? Was it just a product of this game, the specific matchup, game conditions, whatever? And what are things that the Ravens are more serious and could prop up and pose more of an issue going forward? And I do think when you bring up the center issue here, that one I think is kind of concerning to me, because, as you said, this was an issue that had popped up in previous weeks going into the bye. You're at home. You just came off a bye. This seems like something that I would imagine the coaching staff wanted to work with Linderbaum and the line on. Maybe I'm wrong. And yet it was still an issue. That one to me is a little concerning, and I think would have still been concerned even if the Ravens had won this game by a lot of points. Because, like you said, Chris, we've had this issue in the playoffs before, where no one needs to be reminded of the Buffalo game. I'm not saying the Ravens would have won that game, but that errant snap certainly shut the door on any reasonable hope of a comeback in that game, for not just because of the field position loss, but the injury to Lamar as well. So, yeah, that one was a little concerning, and I think another thing that was concerning, not to jump, we can still talk about this topic if there's more to discuss, but also, again, against the Saints and the Bucs, we saw the Ravens get back in the end zone, but before those two games, there was the issue of red zone offense and just converting, and we saw that rear its head again. And I think we already hit on some of it with the Bateman injury and others. But yeah, that was another thing that to me, like, something that I think we don't want to take too much from just one game, but also it's like, okay, that came back and that was something we thought the Ravens had fixed. And now, okay, we're having issues in the red zone again. So yeah, I don't know if you guys had any thoughts of issues on the offense that you view as not just issues of this specific game, but stuff that the Ravens will still need to clean up going forward.
Totally. Yeah, this was a topic I kind of wanted to bring up of like, this is the game people are going to circle and they're going to come back to, and they're going to say, see, this is where you could have told that the Ravens were not going to be able to proceed. This is it. Like, how'd you guys not know? Like, how'd you not know? I knew, that the Ravens were going to fail in the playoffs and have a flat game. They were flat against the Panthers. And crap like that. This is totally the game. But the good news is, I think the Ravens, like, it seems like those early losses, Harbaugh talked about in his presser this week, the early losses really gave him a sense of urgency to, like, keep being frustrated and hungry and mad and wanting to improve and fix these things, even when they're winning, because it's easy to brush things under the rug when you're winning and say, it's fine, we won. And I don't think this team's going to do that. And I'm not saying they did it in 2019, but I just think it's a focus still. And, I thought another thing that was interesting for the presser this week was they asked him about Lamar punting the ball after that delay of game and kind of like wondering his thoughts. And Harbaugh looked, a little uneasy with almost the question or like the moment. And he's like, yeah, I have to talk to Lamar about that because it's kind of on me for letting that happen in practice. But they could have called a delay of game on that antic. It's just something that we can't be allowing anymore. So I have to like cut down on it, and we can't let that happen anymore because it's not appropriate or whatever. And I just thought that was interesting too, because I'm glad, like, that's a smaller example in a way, but it's an example of them saying, even though we won, we got to correct these things and not let it, persist. So even small things about how you practice and how it'll translate to the game for just, raw emotional reaction is something worth noting that they're keeping an eye on.
That's funny. Like, part of, I don't want to belabor that because I do want to get back to Peter's point, but part of me was actually kind of wondering as you were mentioning that, Alec, if like, I agree with you. I watched the interview as well, and I do tend to think that it was probably more genuine, but in the back of my mind, I'm wondering if like that also could be just like John just sort of crafting something, because I would totally throw off the media and just because I'm sure, man. I'm sure the fan is going to be talking about this. I'm sure some other people are going to be talking about that moment from Harbaugh and be like, "Oh, Lamar's not a leader," and like whatever. And like, I sort of get it, but also like, whatever. It's not a big deal. Like, all things considered, I would much rather fix the center play. I want to figure out the red zone offense. There's so many more important things I think to deal with the team. But anyway, to transition what you were saying, Peter, around like, what are my concerns moving forward? I mean, red zone. I think red zone offense in general. I think honestly, it's just really the question of like, I don't think the Ravens expected Bateman to be hurt. I think he was supposed to be a big part of this offense. I don't think it's a surprise now that he's gone, that Duvernay is also getting fewer opportunities, particularly in the pass game. I don't really think he's like a replacement for Bateman. I think he is kind of that X factor. And like, if you have some two solid options on the outside, you can have Duvernay exploit some matchups. You can get him involved a little bit more in the run game. He can kind of be that weapon to match him up against some other people, and you might be able to get a few good plays from him. But being like that 1-2 guy, I don't really think is effective, and I think that's a little bit of a chain reaction right now. Just like, we're not really having that many legitimate weapons outside of Andrews. DeMarcus Robinson is getting involved, but what we need to see more from him is just, can he be that red zone threat? If defenses are going to hone in on one or two guys on the defense, like, is he going to be that? Or is he feasting on these sort of, defenses not focusing coverage on him. It kind of remains to be seen. That's where I think, Gus comes back, Dobbins comes back. I think that will significantly help a red zone offense, because I think that will add a legitimate, okay, they can be able to hit those goal line runs. I have more success than maybe a Drake or a Hill or Davis. But you can also get them involved a little bit in the pass game as well. They are proven weapons in that field, and they kind of just add a little bit more for defenses to be able to focus on. I think that will help open up things for other players. I just think right now it's really just Andrews. He's really the only guy that defenses have to focus on, and just other guys aren't really getting those right opportunities to be able to make plays. But I honestly, it is going to be a big problem. I think Bateman's injury really just kind of made a domino effect here, and other guys have to step up.
I think another injury, which we've alluded to already, that we're really hoping is very short, is Ronnie Stanley. Was a very scary play when Lamar fell on that was the injured ankle, right?
It was the injured ankle.
Yeah. At the moment, it seems like it's not something that's going to keep him out for too long, but it's just such an unfortunate reminder that this guy is. It was a really major injury that he suffered, and credit to him. We were getting a little impatient with how long it took him to come back. He's came back and was absolutely his dominant self, and now we're on the watch again for when is he going to take back on the field. And McCary, serviceable guy, another success story by the Ravens of an undrafted player coming in and vastly outperforming expectations, being a good contributor to the line, but it's just not the same. It's just not the same without having Ronnie Stanley there, and we need him back there, and hopefully he is, because with all these other injuries that we're having, you really need the offensive line to be at their top game to give the patchwork skill position set a shot. So really hoping for a speedy recovery for Stanley. I know every Ravens fan is, but we'll be awaiting the reports on his health with bated breath.
I was definitely a little emotional when I saw him get rolled up on, because I was just like, man, the same dang kind of play, same ankle, just I can't fathom him having another injury like that to have to come back from, particularly after the way he was playing after such a long road. And luckily, Lamar, who was late to his, I don't know if he was technically late, but it took a while for him to do his presser after the game. It was good that he was able to, joke about, he told me not to fall on him next time, and he's good. And Harbaugh reiterated that last night and this morning, the progress is looking like it's okay and everything, but they're doing MRI just to be safe. Hopefully everything's clear and he's able to play this week, and it's just all right, let the swelling go down, whatever. But it's just a normal ankle tweak. It's not a ankle reiteration of the problem. So yeah, just it's definitely scary. Like you said, McCary, while he's a replacement level player, or starting level replacement, not just some random person to kind of replace. And we're really lucky to have him and have that kind of depth at tackle. Not many teams have that, but it's still not the place you want to be, because this offensive line and offensive production really has gone up since we've seen the improved play of Stanley inserted. The one last thing I want to bring up, at least, is Likely, bro, you got to catch these balls or not pop them straight up into the air. It's the second week in a row where he's dropped a ball that went straight up in the air, and everyone's breath has to be held for a little bit. Not great. It's just one of those things where I feel it's, I don't know if it's taught per se. I know I've always heard it, whatever you do, don't let the ball, don't bobble it up. You know what I mean? And yeah, it was a scary moment, and I don't want that to bite us later in the season. So I want to see him, just be that guy that catches balls and hauls them in, gets yards. Oh, one last thing too about Likely, man, I have an idea. The reason I started looking at Ricard's contract and posted in the chat is that I think we did that same wheel route concept with Likely instead of Ricard. All the gravity was going towards Mark Andrews on that play, and I think that would still work. You know what I mean? I think he would still have that gravity. But you have a guy like Likely with more speed and better hands, apparently, after I just gave crap for his hands, but like better hands, be able to get under that ball, catch it, and make a dynamic play against a linebacker. I think it's a good matchup, a good exploit, so to speak. And I could see him being able to fill that role. And if his blocking keeps improving, I could see after next season we let Ricard walk because we could save $4 million against the cap, and then use him as more of an H-back player. I mean, he's a whole different look than Ricard is right now. I admit, but like it was just something an idea I had earlier today.
You trying to get rid of Ricard already?
No, I'm not trying to get rid of Card. I knew this would be the next thing. I'm just looking at it from the front
He did
office.
miss a block. I was going to say
he did.
I feel a couple blocks. Like
he didn't get that catch either. He got a gift. He could have gotten a pretty big one there at the beginning of the game. No, I mean I feel like every year people are trying to get rid of Ricard, and I know he's a polarizing player. There's a lot of fans who are just like, man, he's just slowing down our offense, and then other people are saying like, man, he's so great in the run game. I'm kind of in the middle, but yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I like it, but I just also feel like the Ravens really like Ricard a lot too. So it'll be really interesting to see in the future what they do with that.
They're obsessed with Ricard. That's not a bad thing. Like, I think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's just
no. He certainly brings value to the offense. I also think that the argument of too much Ricard it doesn't make sense in the modern NFL has some weight as well. So yeah, it's interesting, but I think it's a good problem to have. A good problem to have when you have a unique player like that, and a guy who could maybe fit that role and make it a little more modern. So. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the Ravens do there. I certainly think, though, that that thought has been on someone's mind in the building, because I think there's a lot of sense to what you're posing there for the offense.
It's about that time for MVPs, or should we anything for special teams before we do that?
I was stunned that punt was actually able to get downed by the 6-yard line or whatever it was, and it wasn't a touchback. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that review worked. Just the Boger effect, He can just you can make him. It was like something we'll bring up in the bet show later this week of like reverse psychology, coming out to work. But that was weird. I do want to say like Stout man needs to play better. I feel like even though like it could have been the strategy to punt the ball like straight up in the air, get caught up in the wind, not go that far, and trap him at the 17-yard line or whatever. He had touchbacks that were disappointing, and it just like I don't have confidence when he's out there that he's going to make a punt, like an advantageous punt. Like right now, it's just like he is a punter that punts the ball, and I'm not excited to watch him punt. And I was sold a bill of goods, and like we saw some preseason flashes of him being a punter that's going to excite and make difference-making moves, and we're not seeing that consistently. And that's something I want to see improve, because I think it's another X factor for this defense, so to speak, if he's able to flip fields and really bail out the offense.
I'm okay with Stout, and here's why. I get what you're saying, but he's being coached up by the GOAT. And maybe I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek there, but I mean, Sam Cook, I am interested to see what he does with Stout, because, it took Cook a few years too. He was not a very good punter, and really, honestly, he was a very average punter until around 2014 was when he really was able to elevate and change his game. So I think it's going to take some time with Stout. He's a rookie just like other players. So I get the frustration with it, but I'm personally not panicking at all with Stout. I think he's going to be just fine.
All right, so Stout's not getting your MVP. All right, then who is getting your MVP, Alec? I feel like we should go into that.
All right. I mean, I have a lot of options I wrote down that I would be willing to give. I don't know if anyone had one that was they really wanted to discuss before I go. I don't want to take
Just
your
go
guy.
for it, man. Just pick.
Go for it, man. Go for it.
Money Marlowe. I like watching Money Marlowe earn that paycheck. I saw his new event centers opening up in Alabama. Good for him. And I like watching the little goon yell and scream every time he makes plays and energize the team. So I appreciate his positional versatility to improve the defense overall by going on the inside when guys like Hamilton are unable to play. And yeah, just he had a huge game. I think it's kind of quietly getting on notice in the NFL sphere that he's a top cornerback again and like having like a huge season, and that's fine by me.
Yeah, I think the NFL as a whole is sleeping on Marlon. He got ridden a little too hard last year for the struggles that he had, and he's definitely not getting acknowledged enough for the huge bounce back that he's had. I definitely agree with that MVP nomination, and I kind of hinted at mine already. Again, not a guy who had a huge game, but Brandon Stevens came in. He stepped up when Hamilton went out. Like Alex said, they shuffled the defense a bit, but still, Stevens played his role well, and the defense didn't lose their step. He wasn't the weak link that the Panthers were able to exploit. So got to give the props here to props, I should say, not crops. I got no crops to give to Stevens, but I got props to give to him for coming off the bench and stepping up and helping hold the line for the Ravens defense in a game where they really had no room to give up any points.
Interesting pick. Okay, I wouldn't have expected that. I'm going to give mine to Demarcus Robinson because you take him away from this offense and it looks a lot worse than what it already was. So, it was definitely his best game as a Raven and something I've been wanting to see for a couple of weeks now. And finally kind of had that connection from Omar and was able to put up some good numbers.
Well, very cool. We'll have our bets coming out later in the week. Enjoy your Turkey Day, but not quite yet because we will have a preview show also coming out to talk about those Jaguars. And if anyone's going to that game, have fun. Sounds like it might be nice to get that nice weather, presumably nice weather, I guess. But, it'll be a good game to observe against another bad team and see if the Ravens are able to give us a better taste in our mouth than they did after this game. You can find us on that social media platform of questionable staying power at OneWinningPod. And you can also email us with that email provider that's not going anywhere. OneWinningPod@gmail.com. We'll be back later in the
and
week.
YouTube.
Oh, yeah, of course. YouTube, the video player that's not going anywhere, owned by the same company as the email client that's not going anywhere. Real stable company. You'll see us there later in the week. And we'll also have a history corner, I imagine, too. So stay tuned, and we'll see you later this week. Go Ravens.